In this video, I'm going to be showing you my process going from a sketch to values, adding color and rendering to a final piece. I use Photoshop for my work, but the tips in this video will transfer over to pretty much any painting software that you have. I usually start off with about 2 or 3 sketches before refining it to something more clean. The initial sketches are super rough, and in that stage I'm just trying to get the idea down initially. Then I refine those sketches by experimenting with shape contrast, composition, and thinking about where I want the focus to be. When you have an area of high detail next to an area of low detail, it's going to pop out and help the viewer's eye focus on that area. That's really important to think about if you want your image to read well. For this piece I wanted the head to be the most detailed part, so that's what I focused on. I try to keep the line work as clean as possible on the final sketch, because this helps a lot when it comes to the next stage. The value stage. At this point I'm happy with my sketch. It's not too detailed, but it's clean. Values are how dark or light something is. You can just jump in with a color, but I find it easier to get my values right before thinking about that. It doesn't matter what colors you put on there, if your values are wrong, the image just will not work. To do this, I put a layer below the sketch to plan my values. I'm still learning, so it helps me out a lot to plan and know what I want in advance. You should already have an idea of your lighting at this stage, as this will dictate how you add shadow and highlights. For this piece I wanted a high frontal ambient light with strong backlighting. Some very important things that will help you a lot is to limit the values you're using. It helps a lot to avoid the highest and lowest values, using these in rare moments for really dark ambient occlusion shadows where lights just do not hit, and for small speckles of highlights just to give things a little bit more pop. Here's an example of a value range I might choose for one material, the central being my base value, the higher values for highlights and lower values for shadows. Keep in mind that some objects will naturally have a darker or lighter base value, and materials will reflect light in different ways, so adjust your limits for each of these. Remember, a white newspaper in shadow is darker than a black t-shirt in the light. If this is a concept you're struggling to grasp, I highly recommend doing some value studies. Take some black and white images into Photoshop or whatever software you use and try recreating them without color picking from the photos. Another useful thing I like to do is take an image into Photoshop, decrease the saturation to 0 if it has color, and color picking the value range that is used. When I do this, I'm always trying to think about why the artist has chosen these values and where they've used these values. I might make a separate video about this in the future, so let me know if that's something you'd like to see. To start painting, I put the base values down of each object on a separate layer. Then I add the highlights and shadows of the object on clipping mask layers above them. Stay zoomed out as you block these in, and if it reads well from a distance, then it's working. Squinting your eyes can help out a lot for this. I like to flip my image sometimes, this keeps my eyes fresh and I can see where it needs more work. Taking breaks helps too. When you come back, you'll see exactly what is wrong with the piece so far. When the image looks good from a distance, you can zoom in slightly, refining the values even more. When it looks good, zoom in again and keep adding more detail until you're happy. The more detail you do at this stage, the less painting over you'll have to do when it comes to adding color later on. Using an overlay layer and a soft round brush can help push the shapes even more. It adds shadows and highlights to make the image appear more three-dimensional. To add shadows, just make the values less than 50%, and to add highlight, just make the value higher than 50%. Once I have the base values done with some highlights and shadow, I tend to merge all of the value layers together. Then I put the sketch layer as a clipping mask layer on top and begin to paint over it. This merges it all together. I keep some of the darkest lines as ambient occlusion shadow and paint over the rest to merge it all. I wanted this piece to be more stylized, so I didn't go into major detail in my value painting. At this stage, you should still be thinking about where you want your focus to be. Having the most contrasted value in one area will help focus the viewer's eye there. When I'm happy with the values, I'll start on the color. It really helps to know about color theory and know what colors work well together for this, so I'd recommend definitely doing some studying into that if you can. So I do a rough color plan, then I add color layers on top of the flattened value layer for each different thing. For example, the eyes, skin, brain, suit, shirt, tie will all have their own separate color layers. Make sure to set the mode of the layer to color. This will help keep the values of your value sketch intact. The colors may not come out how you want them initially, and this can be quite discouraging, but a cool trick is to add a gradient map on top and experiment with this until you have something you're looking for. You can even add color balances to change the color of the values of an area. Just have fun with this and experiment. If you do this on separate layers, you can turn them on and off to see whether you improved your piece or if you don't like it. Don't be scared to just delete a layer if you don't like it and do it again. Do the switch part like the eyes, skin, brain as I mentioned before, you'll soon see that it starts to look a lot better. Your image still might look a little bit flat. To make your colors interesting, you want to add some color variation. In this piece I add more purples to the eye and blues to the fleshy mouth to help it pop a bit more. If you're just painting over these layers with a normal layer, be careful to select colors of similar value of the area. You don't want to lose the hard work you defined previously on the value painting. An easy way I found to add color variation is by selecting the area that you want, such as the eyes, skin, brain or whatever, and add an overlay layer on top. Paint over this area with a soft round brush, erasing away with the soft brush as well if it becomes too much. You can add different colors this way and make it a lot more interesting. You can then finalize your image by rendering it further. Add little details like freckles, hairs, white highlights. You don't have to render and add detail to every single area. Remember, you still have a main focus of the piece. In this piece, I wanted the head to be the most rendered area. That's why I add hairs, freckles, pores, and highlights to this part, but not on the suit or anything like that. I could have rendered this image for hours and hours, but it's important to call it finished at some point and take what you've learned onto the next piece. Remember, finished is better than perfect. I hope this tutorial has helped you out in some way. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section and I'll do my best to answer it or even make a video on it. I'll probably add my high-res image, Photoshop files and full-length recorded footage onto Gumroad in the future, so please look out for that if that's something you're interested in. If you're looking for more tutorials, I'd highly recommend Max Greg's painting tutorial on Gumroad, and Charlie Bowater has some amazing ones too. Arthur Gamaldanov, I hope I'm not butchering your name, has some fantastic tutorials on his YouTube channel as well. I don't know how to say his second name, but Trent Kanuga has some awesome tutorials on his channel as well, so make sure to check them out. There's so many resources out there from amazing artists that'll help you learn. I haven't checked them all out, but those were the ones that stood out for me in particular. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.